Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. You are all registered and have entered the Zoom webinar for the Invest in Youth Application Clinic hosted by the Brooklyn Community Foundation. We're very excited to have you join us this afternoon. I'm joined by two of my beloved colleagues, Marcella and Sabrina. They'll come off mute to briefly introduce themselves and we'll kick off and get things started.
Thank you, Leanne. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with you. I am Marcella Tillett, Vice President of Programs and Partnerships here at Brooklyn Community Foundation. I'll be co-facilitating the application clinic with Leanne, and I'll pass it over to Sabrina to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sabrina Hargrave, and she, her pronouns, and I'm another program officer here at the Brooklyn Community Foundation. Just sitting here to observe and learn and support Leanne throughout this webinar and throughout the Invest in Youth grant-making process.
Wonderful. Thank you both. As I mentioned before, this webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to share with all registrants after. So a couple of things as we kick off this application clinic. We are here today to discuss an overview of the application process for the Invest in Youth portfolio at the Brooklyn Community Foundation. As we have started with all of our portfolios at the foundation, this is a participatory grant-making portfolio where we engage with members from our community, more specifically young people, to partner with us in deliberating decisions around awards for this portfolio. We will get into those details additionally a little later on in the webinar, but wanted to kick us off with a little overview of how things roll out with this grant-making process. And please let me know if you're able to see my screen. If you have questions, I prompt you to use the Q&A chat. Marcella and Sabrina will be monitoring that. And if there's something that I'm saying or is not coming out clearly, please just come off mute to let me know. Okay, so this is our brief agenda. We'll give an overview of the portfolio. We'll also touch briefly on the application process, of course, give a description of organizations that are eligible to receive funding, and then leave room at the end for Q&A. And now I will kick it over to Marcella so she can give us a little bit of an overview about the foundation and the process.
Thank you, Leanne. Again, welcome. We are Brooklyn Community Foundation. I see a number of our community partners in the room, so we're glad that you're with us. My hope is that we also have some folks who are new to Brooklyn Community Foundation and are perhaps meeting us for the first time. We are Brooklyn's Community Foundation. We are solely dedicated to supporting nonprofits that serve Brooklyn, that are based in Brooklyn. We are the only foundation solely focused on Brooklyn's charitable community. We just passed 10 years in existence, being founded in 2009. And since that time have provided $75 million in grants to over 300 nonprofits throughout the borough. We really see ourselves as a connector, as a partner to change, not only sparking change, but also walking kind of side by side, hand in hand with our grantee partners who are on the ground doing the work. We also do a lot of work to mobilize resources and inform and educate donors to the activities and the great work that's happening right in their backyard, and making sure that when they give, they are giving to Brooklyn and giving with Brooklyn Community Foundation. So that's a bit about us as a foundation. I'll move forward and talk about the Invest in Youth grant program, which has been in existence since 2014. This is currently our longest standing grant program at the foundation. We're very proud of it. It's also our largest at $2.5 million in grant making each year. The need for this program came out of our insights sessions, our original process in 2014. And for those of you who are not aware of what our insights process is, it is part of our community engagement and accountability commitment. We hold community conversations with community members, people who work in nonprofits, people who work around issues that impact everyday Brooklynites. So that could be service providers, medical providers, activists, organizers, advocates. We want to hear everyone's voices. We also want to hear the voices of people who receive services and or aren't receiving services, but are very much embedded in their communities and their neighborhoods. So in 2014, we had our first listening practice. And we use the term radical listening practice because we're not there so much to respond. We're really there to learn. We try to create an open space where people can share their experiences, what's working well in their communities that needs to be more deeply invested in, what are the challenges they're facing, and how can a community foundation partner with them to make sure that the issues are being addressed properly and addressed in a way that is driven by and prioritized by community members, since those are the people most impacted by the issues in their communities and should drive the solutions. From that original insights process in 2014, we heard two things loud and clear. One, that deep racial inequities shape the lives of Brooklynites throughout all of our neighborhoods and communities. And so all of our responses need to be informed by understanding of racial justice and equity. And so we apply that lens to all of our work. The other thing we heard was that we need to invest in youth, which is why that's the name of this program. So we continue with that commitment. We prioritize youth development, youth leadership, and immigrant youth, which Leanne will speak to in just a moment. But the other thing we prioritize, and we'll talk about this also as we talk about the process, is youth voice, making sure that youth are not only being treated as leaders and seen as leaders in the organizations they work with in their communities, but also seen as leaders and decision makers in our own process as a foundation. Leanne will share a bit more about how we do that. But this is a kind of overview of the Invest in Youth Grant Program. Leanne, I'll pass it back to you to speak about the details of the focus areas.
Thank you, Marcella. So as Marcella mentioned, the Invest in Youth program is really centering the voice and leadership of Brooklyn youth. We target youth population, especially youth of color, ages 16 to 24, and we're really looking to support organizations that incorporate their voice in programming and operations, in implementing programs in their leadership process. We are also looking to support organizations that understand and realize that this element is necessary in the work that they're doing, especially if they're a direct service organization working with that population and wanting to be more inclusive of that voice in their work. We very much focus on organizations that are, as Marcella mentioned, building youth development and leadership. And this is not just through providing leadership skill opportunities for young people, but also supporting them in platforms across advocacy work, movement work, really centering their voices and their contributions in moving policy and systems change around issues that impact them. We're also looking to support organizations that confront youth justice in the borough. Our youth justice system in the city is often contentious, and the issues that impact young people who interact with these systems, they're often swept to the side. So we look to support thought leadership that embrace young people really thinking about what it means to create a justice system that is equitable and that is not mistreating youth of color. And then we also look to invest in organizations that build the voice of immigrant youth. In our portfolio at the moment, we have organizations that incorporate immigrant youth voice through education platforms. We're working with an organization that is looking to build a more inclusive public education system for immigrant youth who are undocumented, and really providing them with a space to navigate a pipeline to access higher education and better opportunities for them to succeed. As I move on to the slide, I'll pause in case there are any questions that are coming up in the chat that anyone would like to lift up. Okay. So our grant making process for this portfolio, like all of our other portfolios, involves a collaboration with our advisory council that is inclusive of youth from communities where we would like for our dollars to be invested. We work with our advisory council, and I also partner with members of the programs team, 2 of them on the call today, to make make decisions around what organizations are exemplary and are showing up, demonstrating real impact around the issues of youth justice, immigration rights, and youth development and leadership. And we provide these organizations with multi-year support. For up to 3 years, we provide grants of up to $45,000 to organizations that are truly aligned with the values that we have represented in the Invest in Youth portfolio. I should also mention that most of the portfolios at the foundation are multi-year portfolios. We are looking to really invest in deeper partnerships with our nonprofit community in the borough, and we are really trying to step forward and be a thought leader around what it means to build effective and impactful partnerships with grassroots organizations. And as Marcella mentioned before, we are really looking to partner with organizations that are incorporating racial justice in their work. Because this is the Invest in Youth portfolio, we also are looking to partner with organizations that center the voices of young people and are actually incorporating the voices of young people in making decisions. And of course, combating issues on the front lines. So we're looking to partner with organizations working around issues of immigration reform, criminal justice reform, education reform, and really looking to make impact along these lines, creating inclusive policies, especially as they impact youth of color. Along with working and partnering with organizations to drive our mission of advancing racial justice, we also want to ensure that the dollars that are given back to the communities of the borough reach some of our priority boroughs. I'll welcome Marcella to give a little bit more color to why we've chosen these priority neighborhoods to invest our dollars.
Sure. Before I go to the neighborhoods, want to emphasize that a question that comes up a lot is organizations who serve Brooklyn but may not be based in Brooklyn are encouraged to apply as long as your programming is impacting Brooklyn. Also, if you have multi-borough services, multi-site services that cut across boroughs, we are interested in funding the Brooklyn-based work. So the priority considerations relate to your Brooklyn-based work. That's what we're looking to fund. In terms of the priority neighborhoods, these really come from us being informed by not only the voices of community members, we prioritize that in how we respond, but also very real data on what issues our communities are grappling with. And as we look at structural disenfranchisement and marginalization, we want to focus on communities that have borne the brunt of systemic inequity. So these communities that we've identified have higher rates of families living below the federal poverty level. They've been deeply impacted by inadequate education services. They're most impacted by over-policing and have been turned into pipelines for the state carceral system and other surveillance systems and agencies. And so as we think about where our dollars are most needed, we are looking to combat some of the systemic issues that affect communities, particularly Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, and how we can bring resources to bear where they're most needed. So that's why we have these priority communities. And of course, during the Q&A, I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Marcella. Along the lines of organizations that we give priority to, we're really looking to invest in smaller organizations that are demonstrating real impact at a community level. So we're really trying to, with these grant sizes of up to $45,000, make real support organizations to really bolster the work that they're doing. So we focus our grant making to organizations with a budget under 2 million. This is not to say that we do also sometimes include organizations that are larger, but we are certainly looking to prioritize community organizations that are a bit smaller and reaching people most times on an individual level. There are very strong applications that sometimes come through and from organizations working at the policy and systems level change front. And we do give consideration to those applications, but we always mention that we would like to focus dollars being invested in smaller organizations. And of course, as questions come up in the Q&A around this topic, we'll happily address them. So on to eligibility. One of the eligibility requirements before your budget should be under 2 million, but have a minimum of 100,000, because as I mentioned, we're really looking to invest in smaller organizations. As a foundation executing grant making, we can only allot our dollars to 501c3 eligible organizations. Organizations must be in good standing with their 501c3 status from the IRS. We do prioritize focusing on organizations that are serving Brooklyn youth, but of course, if you are an organization that does not have your brick and mortar in the borough or only serve youth in the borough, your application will, of course, be considered. We just welcome partnering with organizations that do prioritize youth of color from the borough. And we also look to partner with organizations that are really aligning with our mission around our commitment to racial justice, building community leadership, lifting up community voice, and of course, in this case, really centering the voices of youth in their programs and operations. We do not fund schools, public, private, or charter. We will not consider organizations with a budget under 100,000 because we're looking to be responsible with our financial investments. We also are not able to give grants to individuals or support capital campaigns. If there are questions around these criteria, of course, feel free to drop them in the Q&A chat.
Can I make a point about the budget size?
Of course.
Something that we have seen and encourage is kind of joint applications. So if there is an organization that is smaller than, has an operating budget, an annual operating budget under $100,000, and they want to partner with a larger organization, that kind of application would be eligible. So it doesn't totally exclude organizations with an operating budget under 6 figures, but you just kind of have to apply a different way.
Thanks for lifting that up. And we, of course, welcome partnerships among our grantee partner network and the larger NGO network. So thank you for lifting that up, Marcella.
And I just also want to emphasize a reminder that Sabrina added in the chat that awards are capped. I don't know if you share this, that awards are capped at 20% of the operating budget. So even though a organization with a $100,000 annual operating budget is eligible to apply, their award would be capped at $20,000. That's a foundation policy to make sure we're in right relationship with organizations and not funding a majority of their budget or too significant a portion that could lead to instability once or if, you know, the funding is not renewed. So the up to $45,000 a year speaks to the 20% cap. So just as a reminder for the smaller organizations that may be in the room.
Excellent. Thank you. I don't know if, are there any more questions coming through? We do have
questions in the chat. We do.
Yes.
So one question, just lost it. One question in the chat was regarding the age of eligibility, not age of eligibility, the age of like the service population that is referred to when we say youth. We're talking about ages 16 to 24. And I lost that question. Sabrina, if you see it in the chat, can you speak to it? But I saw
a question about eligibility of organizations serving middle and high schoolers. So I guess reiterating that it is 16 to 24 is the age population. So you're serving exclusively a middle school age population, then it would not be eligible.
Right. But if you provide services to high schoolers and middle schoolers, you are eligible because you're serving the 16 to 24 population, even if it isn't exclusively that population. So hopefully that's helpful. The other comment comes from Emil. Hello, I work at New York Justice for Our Neighbors, free immigration legal services nonprofit, as a direct provider of legal services, non-criminal, to immigrant youth. Which category of grant should we apply for? You want to respond to that?
Sure. So you're saying that because you're not working around justice issues specifically, you're wondering what bucket you fall into? I want to make sure I get the question correct.
Yeah, I mean, so this person just said, as a direct provider of legal services to immigrant youth, which category of grant should we apply for? It's non-criminal legal services that are being provided.
Yes, your organization would fall under the immigrant youth category. And in your application, it would be great if you would lift up work that you're doing around how you address issues that impact immigrant youth and how you incorporate some of the needs that they're lifting up to make their navigation of our immigration system more amenable. That would be a positive for the LOI that you submit.
So as a reminder, we really want to see how young people's voice is shaping your organization, your programming, et cetera. Next question, are former grantees eligible to apply?
I think all of my colleagues will join me in saying a resounding yes. We never want to break up with our grantee partners, and we're always open to welcoming all of our grantee partners, old and new, to apply for any RFPs that align with the work that they're doing, and of course fit the requirements of the RFP. What I will say is because we are engaging in a participatory process for these grants, it does make the process highly competitive, and we want to have all of our grantee partners and potential grantee partners have a chance to build and deepen a partnership with us. But yes, we welcome all of our grantees, old and new, to apply.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a note about the participatory process, because we work with community members in our decision making and really share that power. Their voices is really impactful and powerful in the decision making process. So that is part of the competitiveness of it, that we are not making decisions in isolation, that we are working with youth for this decision making.
Thank you, Sabrina and Marcella.
I just wanted to add an additional point on that really sets us apart from some other foundations that the folks on the webinar might be more accustomed to. Something that is common in philanthropy is, building that relationship with the program officer, building that relationship with the head of the foundation. And while that is still valuable, we want these partnerships to be strong. We want to get to know the leaders of organizations and the teams that work there. We also are very clear that as a community foundation, as a philanthropic institution, we should not be individual gatekeepers to these funds. So the real like democratizing of decision-making power and how funds and resources are distributed means that there isn't a gatekeeper for that, like to be the target of that relationship building. With that said, of course, we want to hear from you. And of course, we want to come and support your programming. And we want those relationships to be strong for the sake of us being in collaboration with one another. But when it comes to funding, it really goes through the process. It is, power shared with, I think at this point, Leanne, we have 16 youth advisors.
Yes, 16.
Right. So it really does spread that power across many voices and many perspectives and many experiences, and puts the majority of that in the hands of young people, which is where it should be. And I've heard many of you applaud that approach. So this is just a reminder for folks who may be new in the room to our way of grant making. I'm going to check the chat for any additional questions.
Thank you. I was just about to ask.
For now, all of them are answered, but let's continue. There might be one or more slides left.
Yes.
As a reminder, folks in the room, please add your questions to the Q&A. We'll continue to check.
Thank you. All right, so on to our application process. We've been talking a lot about our partnering with our Advisory Council of Youth to make decisions around the ultimate organizations that receive awards through this portfolio. So many of you, or hopefully all of you by the end of the due date for LOIs to be submitted, will have a chance to access our LOI portal to submit LOI to be considered, to be invited to submit a full application that is reviewed by our programs team and our advisory council to be considered for funding. So today we have our application clinic, and on the 29th of April, you will have a chance to, up until the 29th of April, sorry, you'll have a chance to submit an LOI. LOIs are then reviewed by program officers, and we then make decisions about the organizations that will be eligible to submit a full application to be considered. We have, I have to double check the amount of slots that we have available for funding this year. But last year we ended up funding a total of 25 organizations through this portfolio.
We have 11.
11 slots, yes, wonderful. We have 11 slots this year for grantee partners to receive up to $45,000 in funding for up to 3 years. Once we receive full applications, which are due on June 17th, these are reviewed by our programs team and our advisory council. And we also, as part of the full application process, will engage with organizations in site visits. And this provides the advisory council members and program staff with an opportunity to engage with members of the organization, and in some cases, youth who have participated in programs offered by the organizations. It's a chance for us to just learn more about the work, engage personally, and learn more about how the work has been impactful in communities that it serves. We go through a decision-making process. Again, that involves a significant input from our advisory council members. And upon making our decisions at a decision-making convening where we use a very thoughtful rubric process to really analyze the work that is lifted up in the LOI, in the full application, and what we've heard during site visits. We partner with our advisory council members. We, of course, value their voices and contributions as we make these decisions. And we have these decisions reviewed by our board. And then once those are ratified, we make announcements of our finalists. I don't know if Marcella or Sabrina would want to share more around how we make these decisions in partnership with our advisory council members. I don't know.
I don't know if you shared this. I think you may have mentioned this related to the site visits. Mm-hmm. But I'll say this as a reminder. You know, we talk a lot about youth voice and the importance of youth leadership in organizations that are funded through this portfolio. And I know that there's always a very powerful impression and experience in site visits where young people who might be on, like if you have youth members of your board of directors, or you have a youth advisory council, or, you know, youth that work as peers in your organization, or youth that receive services, having their voice in the site visits, where, you know, you'll have Leanne or Sabrina, in addition to other youth advisors, that kind of conversation and really hearing the impact of services is very powerful. So keep in mind who's going to be in the room on our side. And many of you, again, like I see the names, I recognize the names in the room. So many of you do this anyways, but making sure that young people are at the forefront of your work and how you express that work, even if you describe it as such, we also want to see it in the site visit. So that's just a kind of reminder there. We had a question come through the chat that I responded to, but for everyone's benefit, I'll read it out here. Mara asked, can we recommend youth to you who would be strong candidates to be on, to be one of your youth advisors? I said, absolutely. We love working with and recruiting youth advisors. Our current set of advisors, as a reminder, we have 16. They came on board in September of 2021. So we're not going to be recruiting more advisors at this time, and probably not this year at all. But when we do get to the point where we're recruiting more members, we will reach out to all of our community partners. We'll put it in our Brooklyn Accelerator newsletter. We want folks to share it with the young people you work in partnership with and provide services to. So you'll see when we're recruiting again, and we really appreciate if you encourage the young people that you know in your communities as leaders to work with us in that way. Back to, well, we have one more question. Oh, that was the same question. Back to you, Leanne.
Thank you. No questions came in about the application process. I'm seeing in the chat. Yes. Okay.
So we encourage folks, if there are more, well, here we are, Q&A. If there are more questions, we'll give a minute for them to go into the Q&A. You might be typing, so we don't want to rush by that. This is actually a photo of
several, many, yep. Many
several of the people in this photo are currently our Brooklyn, our youth advisors. This is a photo of young people who participated in our Brooklyn Youth Activist Program, and they did participatory grant making for youth-led projects. They would grant out $15,000 a year. And so when we sought to create the Youth Advisory Council, we really wanted to tap the expertise of these young people who had years of participatory grant making experience. They spent, many hours in sessions understanding social justice, structural racism, racial justice and equity, and really understanding how to apply that lens and develop their own kind of socio-political awareness. And they bring all of that to bear in the process. We have other advisory councils, and they are fantastic. And I must say that our young people are the most experienced. So it's really a pleasure to work with them. And you can see some of them here. I do not see additional questions in the Q&A or in the chat.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this is being recorded and we'll be able to share with all registrants. So be on the lookout for that. A reminder of the due dates for the LOI is coming up on April 29th. So be sure that you're able to get your application in, and any questions, you're able to reach out to me, or I should drop it in the chat, youth@pcf.org, with any additional questions. Thank you everyone for your time this evening.
Thanks everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great week.